The small room was heavy with silence. The dim lighting did nothing to ease the tension in the air. A single chair creaked under the weight of the man sitting in front of her. He was trembling slightly, though he tried to hide it, his fingers resting awkwardly on the edge of the table. She could see the sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool temperature. His face was a mixture of disbelief and fear, and he couldn't tear his eyes away from her. Her name was Nyasha. She had lived a life that no one could quite understand. There were rumors, of course, everyone had heard something about her, something that didn't make sense, but no one had dared ask. It was better to keep their distance, to let the whispers fade into the background, where they belonged. But now, the truth was right there, in front of him. In front of them both. And Nyasha wasn't sure whether she should feel relief or terror. The man, his name was David, had crossed a line, one he hadn't known existed, until today. He had pushed too far, asking too many questions. Now, the consequences were about to unfold. Her gaze remained steady, piercing, as if she could see straight through him. She had been preparing for this moment for years, ever since the day the secret had first been discovered. It had consumed her every waking thought, this dark truth she kept hidden from the world. But now, David was here, demanding answers. And Nyasha knew that once the truth was out, there would be no going back. David spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. Is it really true?" The question hung in the air, thick with the weight of his fear. Nyasha didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. The room was filled with 1,000 unspoken words, and David could see the truth in her eyes, even if she hadn't said it yet. His breath quickened, and his hand reached for the glass of water on the table. His fingers were trembling so much that the glass nearly slipped from his grip. He set it down carefully, as if afraid to make any sudden movements, afraid to shatter the fragile silence that had descended. Nyasha watched him, her own heart beating faster, but she showed no sign of it. She had learned long ago how to mask her emotions, to keep them buried deep inside where no one could touch them. But the truth was, she was afraid, too. Terrified. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of something darker. Something that said she knew this moment couldn't be avoided, but she still wanted to fight it. David didn't answer immediately. He just stared at her, as if he were trying to figure out how to approach the impossible question. His mind was racing, trying to piece together the scattered fragments of rumors and half-truths that had been whispered about Nyasha over the years. For months now, he had been investigating, quietly, obsessively, driven by an instinct that told him there was more to her than anyone realized. He had been digging deeper into her past, into the strange gaps in her history that no one could explain. But the closer he got, the more he realized how dangerous it was to get too close. David had been warned, by colleagues, by friends, by people who knew better. But his curiosity had gotten the best of him. He couldn't stop. And now, sitting across from her, he felt the weight of his actions crashing down on him. Nyasha remained motionless, not giving him any hint of what was going through her mind. She knew that he would never be able to truly understand what she had been through, what she had become. No one could. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, David spoke again. I don't understand. How is this possible? How can something like this even exist?" Nyasha's lips twitched in the faintest of smiles, but it was a smile laced with bitterness. "You've spent months trying to figure it out, haven't you?" she asked, her voice almost mocking. "Did you really think you could unravel the mystery that easily?" David's eyes narrowed. "What's the truth, Nyasha? Tell me. I need to know." You don't need to know," she cut him off sharply. "You're not ready for the truth. No one is." He stared at her, his chest tightening with frustration. "Then why tell me anything at all? Why are you sitting here, with me, after all this time?" Nyasha leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his with a sudden intensity. "Because I have no choice." Her voice dropped to a low murmur. "Because you already know too much." David's heart pounded in his chest. He had always known that there was something off about Nyasha, but he had never expected this feeling that he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into a darkness that had no end. Nyasha didn't speak for a moment, her gaze unwavering. The silence between them grew heavy, almost suffocating. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, as if he were caught in a trap he hadn't seen coming. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer now. "Do you really want to know, David? Do you want to know what's been haunting me for all these years? What I have been running from?" He nodded, but his hands were trembling. He was no longer sure if he wanted to hear the truth. What if it was worse than he could have imagined? What if it was something so dark, so unfathomable, that he would never be the same again? Nyasha's lips parted, but she hesitated. The truth was a weapon. A dangerous weapon. Once it was unleashed, there was no taking it back. "I'm going to tell you, David," she said, her voice low and steady, "but you have to understand something first. There are things in this world, things that should never be disturbed. Secrets that were meant to stay buried. I've kept mine hidden for a reason." David swallowed hard, trying to ignore the feeling of dread that was creeping up his spine. "I'm ready," he whispered, though he wasn't sure he was. Nyasha took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was it, the moment she had dreaded for so long. She knew it would come one day. Her eyes softened for the briefest of moments, and then she began to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "It started long before I was born. My family, we come from a line of people who hold a power, a gift, if you want to call it that. It's a gift that runs through our blood, passed down through generations. But it's not a gift you'd want to have." David leaned in, hanging on to every word. "What do you mean?" Nyasha paused, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "It's a curse. A curse that's been with us for centuries. And now it's my turn to carry it." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He didn't know what he expected, but it wasn't this. "A curse," he repeated, his voice barely audible. "What kind of curse?" Nyasha looked away for the first time, as if the weight of her words was too much to bear. "A curse that no man can bear. A curse that has haunted every single one of us. And it's the reason men fear me. It's the reason I can't get close to anyone." David's mind was spinning. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the words wouldn't come. The fear that had taken root in his chest was growing, choking him. He wanted to know more, but at the same time, he was afraid to hear it. But Nyasha wasn't done yet. She leaned back, her eyes now dark with something he couldn't read. "You're not the first man to ask me about it," she said, her voice colder now. "And you won't be the last. But once you know the truth, there's no going back. You'll never look at me the same way again." David opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He was lost in her words, in the darkness she had just revealed. And that was when the door opened. The door closed softly behind him, but the noise of it was like a cannon shot in David's ears. His world had just shifted. Everything he thought he knew about Nyasha had crumbled in a heartbeat. He could barely process the words she had spoken, words that lingered in the air like smoke, their meaning suffocating him. She had told him about a curse. A curse that had haunted her family for generations, one that no man could bear, and now, David felt the weight of it pressing down on his chest. His thoughts were swirling in chaos, struggling to make sense of what she had just revealed. He looked at her again. She was sitting across the table, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. The calmness in her demeanor unsettled him more than anything. How could she be so composed after everything she had just said? Nyasha's gaze was distant, almost lost in some thought that was too far removed for David to follow. She didn't seem to notice the storm that had begun raging inside him. Or maybe she just didn't care. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, David broke the silence. His voice was shaky, filled with disbelief and fear. How is this possible?" He didn't even know if he was asking the right question. What could he even ask at this point? "A curse?" Nyasha's eyes flicked back to him, a faint flicker of something passing across her face. It was gone before he could make sense of it. She sighed, her lips pressing into a thin line. I didn't ask for this, David. None of us did. David leaned forward, the urge to understand overwhelming him. He had come too far, dug too deep into her life to walk away now. His instincts were screaming at him to keep pressing, to keep asking the questions. So, what is it? What's the curse? What happens if, he stopped himself, realizing how reckless he was being. What happens to you? Nyasha's expression didn't change, but the air between them seemed to thicken, heavy with the unspoken. She reached for the glass of water on the table, her fingers moving slowly, as though she was weighing every action before she took it. David waited, holding his breath, but Nyasha didn't drink. She placed the glass back down with a soft clink and looked at him. It's not something I can explain in a few words, she began, her voice softer than before, almost regretful. It's not something you'll be able to understand, even if I tell you everything. David's stomach twisted. The curiosity that had brought him here, the drive to uncover the truth, suddenly felt like an overwhelming burden. He had pushed too far, opened a door that had no easy exit. What's the point of telling me if I can't understand it? He asked, his words sharp. Why not just leave me in the dark? Nyasha didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood up slowly, pacing the small room. Her footsteps were quiet, but each step seemed to add weight to the silence. David watched her, his heart thudding in his chest. What was she thinking? Was she going to walk away from him now, leave him with more questions than answers? He could feel the tension building, and his pulse quickened. I'm not going to leave you in the dark, she said finally, stopping by the window. I'm just trying to protect you. You're not ready for this, David. You don't know what you're asking for. Her words stung, more than he had expected. Protect him? From what? From the truth? From the curse she had spoken of? His mind raced. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. You think I'm not ready? He snapped, standing up. You think I can't handle the truth? Nyasha turned to face him, her eyes filled with something between sadness and pity. It's not about handling the truth. It's about living with it. And once you know, there's no going back. David swallowed hard. He wanted to argue with her, to demand she tell him everything, but her words, her warning, had already planted a seed of doubt. Could he live with the truth? Could anyone? He stared at her, trying to make sense of her words, but all he could think of was how much she had just revealed, and how much was still hidden. What happened to the others? He asked suddenly. The men who came before me. What happened to them? You said I'm not the first to ask. What happened to the others? Nyasha's face hardened at the mention of the others. They didn't handle it well, she said, her voice quiet, almost distant. Most of them left, some of them never came back. But the worst ones, they didn't leave at all. And that's what scares me the most. David's throat tightened. What does that mean? She didn't answer immediately, her eyes moving toward the window as if looking for something just beyond the glass. It means that some things are better left unknown, she said softly, almost to herself. Some things should never be uncovered. David felt a chill run down his spine. So, what are you saying? His voice was barely above a whisper now, the reality of the situation sinking in. Are you telling me I should just walk away? Nyasha turned back to him, her eyes dark with an emotion he couldn't read. I'm telling you that you have a choice, David. You don't have to keep digging. You don't have to keep pushing for answers. You can walk away right now, and you can pretend none of this ever happened. You can go back to your life and forget about me, forget about the curse, and never look back. David's heart pounded in his chest. Was that what he wanted? To just forget? No, he couldn't. Not now. Not after everything. I can't, he said, his voice hoarse. I can't just pretend I never heard any of this. I've already come too far. Nyasha nodded slowly, her gaze softening for a moment, as if she understood his struggle. I knew you'd say that. David took a step toward her, his hands trembling. So, what happens now? She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Now, you'll have to decide for yourself whether you want to know the rest of the story. The truth. David didn't hesitate. I want to know. Nyasha let out a long breath, as if preparing herself for something she had been avoiding. All right. But know this, David, once you know, there's no going back. You'll be just like them. Like the others. Forever changed. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice low and measured. It all began with my great-great-grandmother. She was the first to truly understand the curse, the first to realize that our bloodline wasn't like other people's. She was born with special abilities. Abilities that no one could explain. David leaned in closer, captivated despite himself. Special abilities? What kind of abilities? Nyasha hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his face as though trying to gauge whether he was truly ready to hear it. She could control minds, she said quietly. She could make people do whatever she wanted. But it came at a price. It always did. David's breath caught in his throat. You're saying, she could control people? Nyasha nodded grimly. Yes. But the power didn't come easily. It drained her. Over time, it began to twist her mind, and she started using the power for darker purposes. To control not just people, but situations. And that's when the curse truly began. David's mind raced. He had heard stories of such abilities, but never like this. What happened to her? Nyasha's eyes clouded over with something dark and painful. She was consumed by her power. Eventually, she died. But the curse didn't die with her. It passed down to her children, and then to their children. And now, to me. David felt a chill creep down his spine. And you have the same power? Nyasha looked away, her gaze distant. Yes. But it's not just the power that's cursed. It's the consequences of using it. Consequences? David repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. Nyasha looked him in the eyes then, her expression a mixture of pain and resolve. The curse forces us to live alone. It isolates us. We can never truly connect with anyone because the power we possess can control those around us. And once we start using it, we can never stop. It's like an addiction. A deadly addiction. David stared at her, trying to process the magnitude of what she had just said. But all he could think about was how much worse this was than he had ever imagined. She had lived her whole life in the shadow of this curse, and now, he was drawn into it, too. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? He had no words. Nyasha stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the darkness beyond. That's the truth, David, she said quietly. That's the curse I carry. And the curse that has claimed everyone who's come before me. David stood motionless, his mind in turmoil. The wind howled outside, but inside, the room was silent, except for the sound of David's heartbeat hammering in his ears. Every word Nyasha had spoken still echoed in his mind. He had been drawn into something he didn't understand, something far darker than he could ever have imagined. The curse she described was not just a family secret, it was a weight, a burden that stretched through generations, a cycle of power, isolation, and tragedy. David stood in the center of the room, his thoughts racing, trying to grasp the enormity of what Nyasha had just told him. Control over minds. A deadly addiction. An unbreakable curse that made connection impossible. It sounded like a tale spun from the darkest corners of folklore, yet it was real. It was her reality. His reality now, too. Nyasha had turned away from him, her gaze fixed on the darkened window, but her expression was unreadable. She hadn't spoken for several long minutes, and David felt the silence stretch between them like a chasm. He wasn't sure if he was more afraid of the truth she had shared or the silence that followed it. Finally, he found his voice. You said the curse forces you to be alone. But you've lived your life, survived it, right? How? Nyasha's shoulders stiffened slightly at the question, but she didn't turn around. I've learned to control it, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. For the most part. But there are moments, weak moments, when the power becomes too much. That's when the curse tries to take me. To make me something I can't be. David's chest tightened. What do you mean by take you? What happens when you lose control? Nyasha's hands gripped the edge of the windowsill, her fingers white against the wood. When I lose control, I hurt people. The power takes over, and I can't stop it. I can't stop myself. Her voice cracked on the last words, and for the first time since he had met her, David saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. David took a step toward her, his heart heavy with both fear and sympathy. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person, Nyasha. It's the curse, right? It's controlling you. She shook her head, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. You don't understand. The curse is not just an outside force. It's inside me, David. I can feel it every day, creeping in. It's in my blood, in my bones. The power is mine, but so is the curse. I can't escape it, no matter how hard I try. David felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to reach out to her, to comfort her, but he didn't know how. He didn't even know if he should. Her pain was something deeper than anything he could fix with kind words. But what about the man before me? David asked, trying to focus on something, anything, that could help him understand what was happening. The ones who left, the ones who never came back. What did they experience? Nyasha hesitated for a moment before responding, her voice tinged with sadness. They didn't understand what they were getting into. They thought they could handle it. They thought they could love me, despite the curse. But the curse, it's not something you can fight. It's not something you can love away. David was still trying to process what she was saying. He had always believed that love could overcome anything, that it could conquer even the deepest darkness. But this curse, this power Nyasha had, it wasn't something that could be overcome with love alone. It was a part of her, woven into her very being, and it couldn't be erased. Some of them, Nyasha's voice faltered as she spoke. Some of them thought they could control me. They thought they could use my power for themselves. But they didn't realize that the curse would punish them for it. It punishes everyone. No one gets out unscathed. David's mind reeled. He had only just begun to understand the depth of the situation, but the more he learned, the more he realized how little he knew. So, the curse doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone around you? Nyasha turned slowly, her face pale and drawn. Yes, she said quietly. Everyone. It's a chain. It binds everyone in its path. And the more we try to fight it, the stronger it gets. David felt a shiver of fear grip him. The thought of being pulled into this cursed web, of being trapped in its cycle, filled him with dread. And yet, some part of him couldn't walk away. Some part of him needed to understand, to know how this would end. You said there was a price for everything. For the power, for the curse. What's the price for you? David asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Nyasha's eyes darkened, and for a moment, David saw something dangerous flicker in them, a flash of something wild, untamed. The price is loneliness, she said softly. The price is isolation. It's living with the knowledge that no matter how much you love someone, you'll never truly be able to connect with them. It's knowing that, no matter how hard you try, you'll always be alone. David felt the weight of her words settle over him. He had never truly understood loneliness until now. He had never known what it felt like to be trapped in a cycle of isolation, to be kept at arm's length by something beyond your control. I don't want to be alone, David, Nyasha continued, her voice raw. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to lose myself. But it's happening. And I don't know how to stop it. David took another step toward her, his mind still reeling from everything she had said. But something in her tone, in the rawness of her confession, pulled at his heart. Maybe there's another way, he said, almost to himself. Maybe there's something we can do. Nyasha shook her head, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. I wish I could believe that, she said softly. But I've seen it before. There's no way out. Not for me. Not for anyone. David's stomach tightened. He didn't know what to say. What could he say? The curse had taken so much from her already, her family, her ability to love, her peace of mind. How much more could it take before it destroyed everything? Do you ever think about leaving? David asked quietly. Running away from it all? Leaving the curse behind? Nyasha looked at him, her expression unreadable. I've thought about it. Many times. But the curse isn't something you can just leave behind. It follows you. It hunts you. And no matter how far you run, it will always catch up to you. David's heart sank. The weight of her words was unbearable. The curse was inescapable. She was trapped. And now, he was trapped with her. There was a long silence between them, one that stretched on, full of unspoken fears and unasked questions. David didn't know what to do next. He didn't know how to help her. And the more he learned, the more he realized how little power he had in this situation. Finally, Nyasha broke the silence. I don't want you to get hurt, David. I never wanted you to get involved in this. But now you're here, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to protect you from this. David stared at her, his chest tight. I don't want to walk away, Nyasha. I'm not going to leave you. Not now. Her eyes softened slightly, but the sadness never left them. Then you're already part of the curse, David. There's no turning back now. David's heart dropped. He had known, deep down, that there would be no simple way out. But hearing those words from her lips, the finality of it, made everything feel too real. He wasn't sure what would happen next. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed were a blur. The curse, or whatever it was that haunted Nyasha, loomed over everything. David couldn't stop thinking about the promise she made, that once he knew the truth, there was no turning back. But he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when he had learned so much, and yet there was still so much left unsaid. He kept thinking about her last words, there's no turning back now. It wasn't just a warning. It was a reality. He was already deep into the storm. And the question kept gnawing at him, could he help her, or was he simply another pawn in this strange and deadly game? David found himself standing outside Nyasha's house, unsure of what he would find when he walked through that door. Every time he thought about turning around, about leaving it all behind, something inside him pushed him forward. There was no way out now. He knocked once, twice, before the door opened slowly. Nyasha stood there, her expression unreadable. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her shoulders were tense, as if she hadn't slept in days. You came, she said softly, her voice barely audible. I couldn't stay away, David admitted. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. I need to understand this, Nyasha. I need to know what's happening. Her gaze flickered to the side, and she stepped back, allowing him to enter. The air inside the house was heavy, laden with the weight of unsaid things. Silence filled the space between them as David crossed the threshold. I can't do this anymore, Nyasha said suddenly, her words sharp and full of pain. I can't keep dragging you into this mess. It's not fair to you. You should walk away. It's for your own safety. David froze. The idea of walking away, of abandoning her when she needed him most, felt impossible. But he understood why she would say it. The curse had taken so much from her. It had destroyed her relationships, her family, her peace of mind. And now, it threatened to take him, too. He shook his head. I can't leave you like this. Not now. Nyasha closed her eyes briefly, her face contorting with frustration. David, you don't understand. There's a choice I need to make, and I don't know if I can make it. It might mean losing you forever. David took a step closer to her. What choice? Her eyes met his, and in that moment, he saw the desperation she had been hiding all this time. The curse is a force of nature. It's unstoppable, relentless. But there's a way to stop it, at least for a while. But it comes with a price. A terrible price. David felt his pulse quicken. What price? What do you have to do? Nyasha's lips trembled as she spoke. I have to make a sacrifice. A personal one. A choice that will sever all ties with the outside world. A choice that will change everything. David's mind raced. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he could tell it was something far worse than anything he had anticipated. What kind of sacrifice? Nyasha hesitated before speaking again. To stop the curse, I have to give up the one thing that makes me human, the ability to connect with others. I would lose my feelings, my memories, everything that makes me who I am. And I would be forced to live alone. To never let anyone close to me again. David's heart sank as he processed her words. The magnitude of the choice she was facing hit him like a blow. The curse had already stripped so much from her, and now she was being asked to give up even more. The thought of Nyasha living in isolation, completely cut off from everyone, tore at him. But you said there was no way out, David said, his voice barely above a whisper. There's always a way, Nyasha replied softly, but it's never easy. The curse wants to destroy everything, my relationships, my peace, my connection to the world. It feeds on my loneliness, on my isolation. The only way to stop it is to give up everything that matters. David stepped forward, his hand reaching out to touch her arm. Is there no other way? No other choice? Nyasha shook her head slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. There's nothing else. I've searched for years, tried to find a way to break the curse, to escape it. But it's always there, lurking, waiting for me to fail. David's mind was spinning. He didn't want her to make that choice. He didn't want her to sacrifice everything just to survive. He wanted to believe there was another way. But every part of him knew that if she didn't make the choice, the curse would only grow stronger, and eventually, it would consume her completely. I can't ask you to make that choice, Nyasha, David said, his voice full of anguish. I can't let you give up everything just to survive. You're worth more than that. Nyasha closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, David saw a flicker of something he hadn't seen before, hope. That's what makes you different, she whispered. Most people would have walked away by now. But you stayed. And maybe you're the key to breaking the curse. David's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Nyasha took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for something monumental. There's something about you, David. Something that I didn't see at first. I thought I was too damaged for anyone to love me. Too broken to be saved. But maybe, just maybe, you're the one who can break the cycle. You can help me stop this. David was shocked by her words. Me? How? Nyasha's gaze softened, and for the first time, she looked at him as if she truly saw him. Love, she said simply. Your love. I've been running from it for so long, but maybe it's the one thing that can set me free. David's chest tightened. The thought of his love being the key to breaking the curse seemed impossible. But in his heart, he knew it wasn't just love that she needed, it was hope. She needed someone who believed that there was a way out, someone who could hold on to that belief when everything else seemed lost. I'm willing to fight for you, Nyasha, David said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I'm not going to let you make that sacrifice. There has to be another way. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the truth in his words. And in that moment, David knew that whatever happened next, he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when they were so close to breaking the cycle. Nyasha took a step closer to him, her hand trembling as it reached out to touch his. If we're going to fight this together, David, we have to be ready. The curse won't give up easily. It will do everything it can to tear us apart. David nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. The curse was relentless, but so was he. And as long as they had each other, they would keep fighting. But in the back of his mind, a troubling thought lingered: what if they weren't strong enough? What if the curse was more powerful than they could ever imagine? The answer to that question would come soon enough. And when it did, it would change everything. The night felt heavier than before, laden with uncertainty. David and Nyasha stood on the edge of a precipice, both emotionally and physically. The decision they were about to make would change everything, but the cost was unknown, lurking just beyond the edge of understanding. David stared at Nyasha, his heart pounding in his chest. The promise she had made before, about having to give up everything for the curse to end, lingered in his mind like a shadow, and it refused to leave. She had told him it would mean severing all ties with the world, losing every connection, every human link. He had tried to argue, to find another way, but deep down, he knew this was the endgame. They had no more time to wait. The curse was growing, it was inescapable now. It felt like a storm pressing in, darkening the sky, and all they could do was prepare for the inevitable. I'm scared, David, Nyasha said, her voice trembling. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose everything. David reached out and took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. You don't have to lose me. We'll figure this out together. Her eyes, usually so strong, were filled with vulnerability now, raw and open. You don't understand. I've spent my whole life running from this curse, thinking I could outrun it. But it's always there, following me, waiting for me to fail. I've already lost so much, and now I'm about to lose the only thing I have left. You. David shook his head. Not if I can help it. But he knew, deep down, that his presence could only do so much. The curse had been too strong, too relentless. Nyasha had tried everything, fought it with every ounce of her will. It had almost broken her, but she kept going. She didn't let it completely destroy her. Yet here they were, in a battle that felt beyond their control. She stepped away, and David felt the sting of her withdrawal, as if she was pulling away from him emotionally. It was clear she was trying to prepare herself for what was coming next, the loss she'd have to endure to stop the curse. There's one more thing you need to understand, David, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The curse doesn't just want me. It wants anyone I care about. It will do anything to make sure I am alone, utterly alone. And if I don't make the choice, you'll be its next victim. David's stomach twisted in knots. You can't mean that. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, her gaze drifted toward the moonlight outside the window, her thoughts somewhere far off. I don't want to be the one to hurt you, David. But the curse will do everything it can to tear us apart. I've seen it happen to people I loved, people I cared about. It takes them, one by one, until they are gone. And then, it turns to me. The more I fight it, the worse it gets. David's mind was spinning. Everything she had said had an air of finality to it. But if we fight together, maybe we can beat it. Nyasha shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with sadness. There's no beating it, David. It's too powerful, too old. I've spent years researching, looking for answers, but the truth is, there is no magic cure. No easy way out. The only way to stop it, is to give up what's left of me. David's chest tightened as the weight of her words sank in. He had known she was sacrificing herself, but he hadn't fully realized what that meant until now. She was talking about cutting ties with everything she was, a fate worse than death in many ways. No. I won't let you do that, David said firmly, stepping closer. You can't just give up everything. You deserve to have a life. A future. And I will, David, she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. But it's not the future I wanted. It's the only way to survive. If I don't do this, I'll lose everything, and you'll be dragged down with me. David felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. There were no words that could fix this. No answers to give. Everything he had thought he understood about their situation was now crumbling around him. The woman he loved, the woman he had fought to save, was about to lose herself completely. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. I can't let you go through with this, he whispered, his voice breaking. He reached for her, his hands trembling. I won't lose you. She smiled faintly, the weight of her smile heavy with the sadness of the moment. You're not losing me, David. You're saving me. David closed his eyes, as if trying to block out the inevitable truth. You're not going to disappear. I won't let you. But as she looked at him, something shifted. The look in her eyes told him that this was the end. She had made her decision. The weight of the curse was too much, and she had come to terms with the fact that there was no other way. Maybe one day, you'll understand, she whispered. Maybe one day, you'll forgive me. But for now, this is the only way. David couldn't bear to watch her make that decision. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. But as much as he wanted to fight it, as much as he wanted to push back, he knew deep down that her sacrifice was the only way to stop the curse. There was no other choice. The next moments felt like an eternity. The air around them seemed thick, oppressive, as if the very world was holding its breath. Nyasha's hand shook in his, her fingers cold, distant. And then, it happened. With a final, heartbreaking look at him, Nyasha stepped back, her eyes full of sorrow and regret. She closed her eyes, and David felt the weight of her decision settle over him like a heavy cloak. She spoke the words that would seal her fate. I'm sorry, David. I'll always love you. In that instant, something shifted. The room seemed to darken, the air heavier. A presence, an ancient, malevolent force, seemed to fill the room. David felt a chill crawl up his spine as he saw Nyasha's face change. She was no longer the woman he loved. She was a shadow of herself, her expression distant, her eyes blank. The curse had taken hold. David's heart raced as he reached out to her, but it was too late. She was gone. The woman he had loved, the woman who had fought so hard to survive, had disappeared into the darkness. The curse had won.